Good afternoon, John. It's a pleasure to have you here today, this afternoon. So I'll just introduce John to the audience. This is John Heritage, who is the CEO of David Lewis charity, who's very active in their own particular space. So good afternoon, John. And how
Good
are you, sir?
afternoon, Mark, and thank you for the opportunity to come on to your podcast.
Yeah, you're very much welcome. You're very much welcome. So I'll just fire straight into it. So David Lewis, obviously you offer, quite a comprehensive range of services, specialist education, residential, adult day services, all supported by a large team and, quite impressive, very impressive facilities. So what would you say is the most significant evolution that you've seen in the needs of individuals and families that you support over the past few years?
I think if I probably start, Mark, if I can, by just explaining a little bit about David Lewis
Yeah,
as an
fantastic.
organisation. So we're 122 years old this year as an organisation, and we're based near Alderley Edge, and we're probably one of Cheshire's best kept secrets in lots of ways. So our income as an organisation, we're a registered charity, is about 50 million. We employ about 1,200 people, so we're quite a large charity. And we're what I would call a service provider charity. So we're not a campaigning organisation. We provide services directly to individuals that are commissioned or bought for them by either local authorities or the NHS. So we provide our services through three main sort of front-facing elements. We've got our adult residential care services, where people live with us on this site, which is our beautiful, nearly 200-acre site near Alderley Edge, which is just stunning.
Excellent. Oh, wow.
And
Excellent.
we've also got 7 houses where people live with us in the community in and around Cheshire. We also have on this main site a school and a college. We have about 120 people, 125 people who come to us for education, specialist education. So that's young people 11 to 19 for school and 19 to 25 for college. Apart from 10 people who we support, everybody comes for the day. So they all come for the day for their education. And then we have the third element of what we do, which is our day opportunity services. So they are 3 different types of hubs where people can come for confidence building, skills, friendship, and they're based around things like customer service skills. We've got a shop, we've got a cafe, managing money, things like more sensory-based services. We also have more land-based. So we've got quite a comprehensive offer, all underpinned by a really high-quality clinical and therapy services as well. So it's a great organisation delivering some really great services.
Excellent. Wow. So you've got a very diverse portfolio. So obviously within this particular portfolio, there's a lot of sort of integration, a lot of intercommunication. So, obviously seamlessness, to make everything seamless and to sort of to run smoothly, obviously you have to communicate across all your service areas, especially between, let's say, the school, the residential, community-based programs. How do you go about that? I mean, in a nutshell, what sort of like things do you impact to sort of like to make things seamless?
We've got lots of different systems, which is one of our challenges. We have lots of different IT systems that do different things. So whether that's an HR system, which is a new system we've got, to a roster management system, which is a new system we've got, to an incident management system, to a support planning system, to a health and safety system, to a quality system. So we've got a lot of different systems, and that's just a small number. So really the trick for us is how we get those systems integrating in the background, so people have got one version of the truth in terms of the services they operate in, or they manage, or people receive support in. So that's one of our challenges. How do we get all those systems being interoperable? I suppose is the common term. And also, how do we communicate with our staff teams? Because we've got 1,100 people that we employ, and not all of those people, email is necessarily something they are using regularly or on a day-to-day basis. And we all know we all learn in different ways as well. So just because written communication suits a lot of people doesn't mean it suits everybody. So we're constantly thinking about how do we communicate with our staff teams in ways that meet their need, very diverse needs, but also how we communicate with the people we support as well, because their needs mean they need different types of communication as well. So it's quite a complex picture to get that right and to get that working properly.
Yeah, definitely. You sort of like jumped, you kind of answered my next question. In terms, I was just going to ask, you've got 1,100 sort of like highly trained personnel. And obviously there are certain challenges. I think you've mentioned that in terms of integration, interoperability and all those type of things. And also basically ensuring that you have consistent quality, in your deliverables, So I'll just sort of like go on to the next thing. David Lewis, you obviously have fantastic facilities. You've got the swimming pool, you've got a sports hall and all that kind of stuff. You've got a sort of like a center for your, for people, for your resources. So how do you optimize the utilization of these resources to benefit a maximum, let's say, number of individuals, while also, you've got your you're running a business, obviously, while managing operational sort of like overhead for efficiency?
It's a real it's challenging, because one thing we don't necessarily do is monitor space utilisation in terms of the site. So what we do is monitor who lives with us in terms of the number of people clearly that live with us and their needs, but we don't necessarily monitor what that looks like in terms of space that people occupy, because all of the homes that people live in are different sizes, have different
Needs,
with very different
facilities.
needs. Different types of equipment that people might have, different types of space people need. So we don't really look at space utilisation, because it's probably not a particularly effective tool for us, because it bluntly doesn't mean anything. So it's not something we would look at. We're very much about how we meet people's needs in the best environment that suits them, regardless of what space they need then.
Yeah, excellent. That's very
We use
pragmatic and yeah.
But in terms of our other services, that, as you say, the swimming pool, the cafe, the gym, the hydrotherapy pool, lots of core services that are minibuses that we've got across the organisation, we do have mechanisms to make sure we maximise their usage, because clearly what we don't want is some slots being left where people can't use them that need them, or vehicles not being used when they're needed. So we've got systems in place to do that, but we don't necessarily around physical space.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's say from a CEO's perspective, what keeps you up at night, regarding the day-to-day operational efficiency, of David. Are there areas where you feel perhaps manual processes might be hindering, I don't know, might be sort of like hindering, I don't know what, better efficiency or what keeps you up at night in terms of operations? Yeah.
I wouldn't say anything keeps me up at night. I mean,
Yeah.
what makes me, what is always on my mind,
Yeah.
65 days a year, really, 24 hours a day probably, is how we do the best we can for the people we support, because that's why we exist. How do we make sure we're offering the best to them, we're offering them the best opportunities, the best support, and also the same for our staff team. So how do we make sure that we're doing the best we can for them, to make sure we can deliver the best possible care and support. We know that because we've got lots of systems and we've got lots of processes, we think a lot about, and we haven't got this right, we know we haven't got it right, how all of those things,
Maximize it.
yeah, and as simplistic for the end user as they should be and could be. We know that sometimes there are too many handoffs, that people have to go on too many systems to do things. So how do we get to a position where we're minimising that for people that we employ, because actually their skills and their time should be based on providing direct care and support, not necessarily navigating different systems. But we recognise there's an element to their job which is that. So how do we make that as simplistic as possible?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let's say, in the current landscape, obviously technology plays a critical role, sorry, in, when you're talking about, we're talking about service delivery, so how would you say that, obviously you mentioned that you're obviously leveraging technology in terms of client management, communication, and even your specialist education programs. Is there anything that you're kind of perhaps leading towards or looking towards or thinking that, well, in the current way that things are changing or the current evolution of technology, are there certain things that you want to look at more specifically? Or
Definitely. I mean, one of the things we're currently looking at in some detail is we've got a plan over the next 5 years to either modernise or replace a lot of our residential care homes that we operate. So we do use quite a lot of technology in them anyway, in terms of supporting people who may experience seizures because of their epilepsy. So we have quite a lot of technology to support that element of the support and care we can provide. But what we want to also look at is how do we use technology to maximise people's independence? So how do we use it to maximise independence about people doing things for themselves that maybe they can't do currently because of the way we don't have maybe a tech solution that helps them do that, or it's not been invented, or we don't know about it. So when we're doing the 5-year plan for our services, I'm really keen to understand, well, how do we build in technology that is great for people to maximise control and choice in their life, but also enable them to do things that maybe they've had to rely on other people's support for. Well, actually, the trick is how do we help people do more that they want to do for themselves rather than relying on support. So it's just about trying to get that right. And this isn't about trying to replace anybody's support workers with technology. That's definitely not what this is about. It's about working alongside people to give people more choice and more control in their lives. So that's something that I'm very thoughtful about. And then the other element of that is how we think about, again, that end user experience for our staff. So how do we make sure those systems are as interoperable as possible and as simplistic as possible for people?
no, that makes perfect sense. Technology is not, it's meant to make things easier, meant to make things faster, user friendly. That's the great thing about good, excellence or like product management, which is basically what it is. Product management. How do you get the products to to push forward the business, the experience. So as a charity, obviously demonstrating impact and securing sustainable funding, even though you did mention that you weren't, that wasn't your kind of like your prime. So how do you currently measure and communicate the success of impact, in terms of, to donors, stakeholders, the wider community? What I've found is that, one of the great things about technology is having everything in one place. So having, upper management such as yourself, you see something, you see it all there, you can read everything in, within 20 minutes or 15 minutes or even less, you've got an overview. So do you have any sort of like things in place, or do you wish to put things in place, or how is that going?
We have quite a sophisticated quality and performance framework. So we have a lot of data which we use internally to track,
Right.
and that data is only one element of the story, of course it is, but that enables us to track how services are performing, training, experience, incidents, accidents, outcomes that people are experiencing and able to deliver in their life. So we have quite a sophisticated process to track and manage that on a monthly basis. But one of the other things that we are, again, thoughtful about is how do we help tell people stories about why they come to David Lewis and actually the impact of what we do working alongside them has on their life. So we're in the process now of starting to use video, film, photography, and audio and words to share stories. So people talking for themselves about why they come to David Lewis, what they get from David Lewis, what they learn, what they experience, what the experience is like, and the same with families. So we want to try and do that in a really thoughtful way, because that, to me, that's about telling the story about impact and telling people's individual stories, because they should be heard and they need to be heard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So what would you say some of the biggest challenges, you might face, David Lewis faces, in reaching out to potential new clients, or perhaps, securing, I don't know, funding or new initiatives? Are there specific areas where you'd like to see more kind of predictable growth, or things that can be more predictive?
I think for us, we've grown as an organisation over the last 4 years significantly, from an organisation turning over 27 million to 50 million and employing 850 staff to 1,200 nearly. So we've grown sustainably over the last 4 years as an organisation, because we recognise that there's a lot of people who need and deserve services like David Lewis provides, because there's a lot of people who need this type of service. So I think for us it's just about, we don't want to ever do anything which compromises the quality of what we do. We want to make sure what we do is delivered at the highest quality we possibly can, for the people that we support. So we don't want to grow for growth's sake. We want to grow because it's about sustainable growth, more people experiencing what we can deliver and benefiting from what we deliver.
Fantastic. So obviously looking ahead, long-term goals for David Lewis is not necessarily just growth for the sake of growth. It's just, quality in terms of expansion, if there's going to be any, and just, good quality service delivery. Brilliant. So, you mentioned, okay, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that there's also quite a big focus in the organisation on partnerships. So how do we work with our partners? How do we add value through what we do? How do we recognise that we are one part of a big jigsaw in terms of the care, education and support that people receive? And actually, how do we think about delivering some of what I would call the David Lewis magic, but not necessarily on this site? So there might be opportunities to deliver our services in partnership with others off this site, where they're based, in the localities they're based. We've got lots of partnerships with employers around work experience. So there's a big partnership dynamic to what we do as well as we do just that.
You did mention in sort of the operability, you mentioned, because obviously you've got a very diverse portfolio, you've got a lot of different sectors that sort of like are moving and everything like that. I know that this is an area where there is definitely sort of like certain alignment. I don't know, would you be open to another sort of like 15-minute chat? If we want to get into any specific area where you would feel that this is obviously, you know your business very well, that this is one particular area that it's, it could be great relief if there was some sort of like, whether it's little automation or there's certain workflows that, might work better. Perhaps you would obviously, with your heads of departments or whatever, and, we could just have a sort of like a deeper dive. I could give you a growth opportunity in terms of, you can have a look at it. You could say, okay, fine. So these are some of the tools that we can implement. They're not complicated and they're quite simple. As I said, it's not something that we would totally come and overhaul your systems or everything like that. And, we could just go, just slightly deeper dive, and then we could present a growth plan. I'll go back to my engineers and everything like that. They've implemented countless solutions for small companies, for very large companies, and it's always had excellent impact because, as I'm sure you're aware, John, and sort of like challenges and bottlenecks and blockers and everything, they're quite universal when it comes to business. When it comes to sort of like dealing with people, dealing with clients, operational efficiency, saving money. It's not like these solutions are going to sort of like get rid of half your workforce. We're not about that. We're not about that at all. But if you were up for it, or you wanted, maybe perhaps you could allocate somebody, right-hand person, your right-hand man or right-hand female or whatever, just to have a 15-minute call, 20-minute call. We'll just go slightly deeper into it. It doesn't have to be recorded. And we can take it from there. We could make a presentation and you could have a look at it. You could say yes or no, and we can take it from
I'm
there.
up for anything that helps us do what we want to do. I mean, what I would find helpful is if you could send me some examples of what you've done in other places, because I don't want to waste your time or our time by, because what we don't want are new systems. We definitely don't want new systems. We want what we've got to work together. So if it's new systems, thanks or no thanks. If it's opportunities to make what we've got working in a better way, happy to have a look at it. So if you could send me some examples of what you've done, that'd be great. And then I can talk to people this end, and then we'll see if it's worthy of a further conversation. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Excellent. So just on a lighter note, So in the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, where do you see David Lewis? You know, where do you want to be? Do you aim to be?
So in the next 5 years, I would hope we will have completed our transformation plan on this site in terms of the buildings that we've got. We'll have invested between 13 and 15 million in new accommodation on this site, so replacing or refurbishing a number of care homes on this site, which would be brilliant for the people who live there. That would be fabulous. I would see us definitely operating further across the northwest in terms of it from different sites, and operating probably in some additional market space as well, in terms of people with additional needs that we support. How do we look at what that looks like in the next 5 years in terms of the services we provide? So definitely operating on this site, a much more modernised site, and operating in partnership and across other spaces really in the northwest. I'd see us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. It's been a great 20 minutes chat and very insightful, great value. And we'll talk very, very soon.